Hello, this is Claudia, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the April 29th issue of the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Trump administration secures new indictment against Comey. The new case stems from a social media post showing seashells on a North Carolina beach that the Trump administration characterized as a threat against the president. James B. Comey, the former FBI director, was indicted on Tuesday over a social media post, signaling a renewed effort by the Justice Department to pursue charges against him after its bid last year ended in failure. A federal grand jury in North Carolina charged Mr. Comey with making a threat against the president and transmitting a threat across state lines, according to court records. The case, which centers on an image of seashells that Mr. Comey posted on Instagram, is the latest salvo in the department's tortured efforts to satisfy the demands of President Trump to go after longtime targets of his wrath. Under the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, the department has sought to accelerate Mr. Trump's retribution campaign after the president fired Attorney General Pam Bondi, in part over his dissatisfaction with her effectiveness in bringing cases against his perceived enemies. Mr. Comey vowed to fight the case. "I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid, and I still believe in the independent federal judiciary. So let's go," he said in a video statement posted online. Mr. Comey urged Americans to keep the faith. The new Comey charge stems from an incident nearly a year ago when the former FBI director, vacationing on the North Carolina coast, posted a photograph on social media showing seashells arranged to say 8647, combining the slang term 86, often used to mean dismiss or remove, with an apparent reference to Mr. Trump, the country's 47th president. After an uproar ensued over the post, Mr. Comey deleted it, saying that he did not know that it could be seen as having a violent connotation and that he opposed violence of any kind. Members of the administration, as well as Mr. Trump's family, declared that the meaning of 86 was to kill and that the seashell message amounted to a threat to assassinate the president. According to court records, the case was assigned to Judge Louise W. Flanagan of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina, an appointee of President George W. Bush, whose courthouse is in New Bern, North Carolina. Senator Richard J. Durbin of Illinois, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, denounced the case as a sign that the Justice Department's leaders were desperate to continue to appease Donald Trump by appealing to his worst instincts and need for petty retribution. Just like the last baseless indictment against Mr. Comey, this is another case of a weaponized Justice Department lashing out on behalf of a vengeful president, he added. At a news conference on Tuesday, the FBI director, Kash Patel, said that Mr. Comey's disgracefully encouraged a threat on President Trump's life and posted it on Instagram for the world to see. The 3-page indictment makes a similar claim, asserting that a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret the message written in seashells as a serious expression of an intent to harm President Trump. Mr. Comey did knowingly and willfully make a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States, the document charges. Showing a defendant's intent is a critical part of a criminal trial. Asked at a news conference how prosecutors plan to show that Mr. Comey intended to threaten Mr. Trump's safety, Mr. Blanche said, "You prove intent with witness, with documents, with the defendant himself," adding, "and that's how we'll prove intent in this case." Court records indicate an arrest warrant was also issued for Mr. Comey, but it was not immediately clear if the authorities would allow him to self-surrender. Mr. Blanche said the arrangements had yet to be worked out with Mr. Comey's lawyers. After Mr. Comey posted the seashell image, the Secret Service tracked the location of Mr. Comey and his wife as they traveled from their vacation spot to their home in Northern Virginia. The Secret Service interviewed him by phone that evening, and Mr. Comey said he had no intent to cause the president harm. The next day, he sat for an in-person interview. Mr. Blanche said that the case had been under investigation the entire time, complicated by legal rules involving a digital evidence from Mr. Comey, who is a lawyer. The indictment also seeks forfeiture of any property, real or personal, which constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the said offense. It is unclear what proceeds the Justice Department believes Mr. Comey made from posting the seashells photo online. It was the second time in the past year that the Justice Department sought to bring charges against Mr. Comey. The first indictment against him was thrown out by a judge, and other efforts against Mr. Trump's targets have faltered in the face of grand juries or judges. Last September, Mr. Comey was indicted by a grand jury in Virginia, accused of lying and obstructing a congressional investigation over testimony he gave in 2020. That indictment came after Mr. Trump fired the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia after he and career prosecutors in the office had determined the evidence did not support criminal charges against Mr. Comey. In the fall, Mr. Trump intensified his public pressure campaign on the Justice Department. He publicly called upon Ms. Bondi to use her power to go after adversaries he has described as scum, including Mr. Comey. Ms. Bondi appeared to embrace the move in a social media post, without mentioning Mr. Comey by name, writing, "No one is above the law." The president promptly installed Lindsay Halligan, a White House aide with no previous prosecutorial experience, as the U.S. Attorney in Eastern Virginia. Ms. Halligan quickly secured a grand jury indictment against Ms. Comey, and then another in an unrelated case against New York's Attorney General Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who sued Mr. Trump for inflating the value of his business assets. Both indictments were dismissed in November after a judge ruled that Trump administration's appointment of Ms. Halligan did not follow federal law for such positions. Even though a judge ruled that certain evidence in the Comey case was off limits to prosecutors, the Trump administration has signaled its intent to continue its pursuit of Mr. Comey. Mr. Comey, a former federal prosecutor and deputy attorney general, became FBI director in 2013 and was fired by Mr. Trump in 2017 as the agency was investigating whether Mr. Trump's 2016 election campaign had conspired with Russian intelligence operatives. Mr. Comey's firing led to the appointment of a special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, to oversee the Russia investigation, which ultimately neither accused Mr. Trump of a crime nor exonerated him. Mr. Trump's enmity against Mr. Comey only intensified over the years as he rallied against what he called a witch hunt. Mr. Comey, for his part, became a public critic of the president, comparing him to a mafia boss. During the 2024 campaign, he said that a second Trump presidency would pose a danger to all Americans. News of Mr. Comey's indictment came the same day that his daughter, Maureen Comey, who was fired as a federal prosecutor in Manhattan last year, won a court ruling allowing her to proceed with a lawsuit against the government. She asserts that she was fired because of Mr. Trump's animosity toward her father, or because of her perceived political affiliation and beliefs, or both. Florida Republicans refuse to take up DeSantis bill loosening vaccine mandates. The House Speaker cited concerns about children being in school without measles and mumps and polio and chickenpox vaccines that had been working for decades. Republican state lawmakers in Florida rejected Governor Ron DeSantis' latest push to loosen vaccine mandates for school children on Tuesday, once again rebuking the Republican governor on one of his legislative priorities. Mr. DeSantis had called lawmakers into a 4-day special session this week, in part to consider a bill that would allow more children to opt out of certain vaccines. But as soon as Daniel Perez, the Republican Speaker of the State House and Mr. DeSantis' chief legislative foe, opened the session on Tuesday morning, he made a surprise announcement that his chamber would not take up the proposal at all, effectively ending its chances. Mr. Perez, who is from Miami and who has 3 young children, said he was concerned about children being in school without measles and mumps and polio and chickenpox vaccines that have been working for decades. That was something that I was uncomfortable with, Mr. Perez told reporters shortly after his announcement. When the state Senate convened 2 hours later, Republican leaders in that chamber said that they would table the vaccines legislation backed by the governor. The proposal would have allowed families to seek exemptions from certain vaccination requirements based on their personal beliefs or conscience. The state already allows exemptions for medical or religious reasons. The bill had come up during the regular legislative session earlier this year, but passed only in the Senate. Mr. DeSantis had said that the bill would promote medical freedom, liking it to the state's ban on mask mandates and other policies that his administration opted during the coronavirus pandemic. critics have said that broadening Florida's existing vaccine exemptions law was unnecessary and would allow a dangerously high proportion of children to attend school unvaccinated. The House's rejection of the bill was the latest show of Republican defiance toward the term-limited governor who has faced more pushback from his own party over the past 2 years than at any other time during his nearly 8 years in office. Mr. Perez, in particular, has challenged him on issues including immigration enforcement and regulating artificial intelligence. Republicans hold supermajorities in the State House and Senate. Mr. DeSantis responded by calling that decision not to act swiftly on the bill, as well as another regulating AI that Mr. Perez also rejected. Typical political shenanigans. Will be interesting to see these guys campaign as big tech enthusiasts and guardians of the medical industrial complex, he wrote on X. Last year, Mr. DeSantis and his Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph A. Ladapo, blindsided Republican lawmakers when they announced that they wanted to eliminate all vaccine mandates for school children, even though doing so would require legislative approval for most immunizations. Florida would have been the first state to make such a change, and many lawmakers appeared leery of going that far. Instead, the Florida Department of Health, which Dr. Ladapo oversees, began working toward repealing its requirement that children be vaccinated against 4 infectious diseases: varicella, chickenpox, hepatitis B, pneumococcal bacteria, and Haemophilus influenza type B or HIB, a bacterium that is distinct from the influenza virus and that on rare occasions can be deadly. The Health Department held a single public hearing on its proposal in December and is still working on the repeal. Other mandatory childhood vaccines in Florida, including those against measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, whooping cough, diphtheria, and polio, are all under the purview of the legislature. Live updates. Supreme Court deals blow to Voting Rights Act. The justices split along ideological lines, ruled that a Louisiana voting map was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. In her dissent, Justice Elena Kagan accused the court's conservative majority of gutting a landmark law. The court's decision on the Louisiana map could affect at least some redistricting at the state level. Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi recently announced he would summon lawmakers for a separate special session, 21 calendar days after the ruling, whenever it came to redraw the maps for the Mississippi Supreme Court. The existing map had been found in violation of Section 2. It's unclear how the decision will impact the midterm elections and the nationwide redistricting battle that has spiraled already into multiple states. Coming in the middle of the primary calendar, there are still multiple states, including Florida and possibly Tennessee, that could draw new maps citing today's decision, and Louisiana will likely lose one Democratic district. In her dissent, Justice Kagan says the majority has gutted the Voting Rights Act. She concludes, "I dissent because the court betrays its duty to faithfully implement the great statute Congress wrote. I dissent because the court's decision will set back the foundational right Congress granted of racial equality and electoral opportunity." Although the justices struck down Louisiana's map, the court's conservative majority upheld the constitutionality of the Voting Rights Act itself. Voting rights groups have feared that the court might use the case to gut the remaining provisions of the landmark civil rights law. In her dissent, Justice Kagan said today's decision completes the Supreme Court three-step plan to eliminate the protections of the Voting Rights Act that started in 2013 in the Shelby County case. The 3 liberal justices dissented, with Justice Elena Kagan writing that the majority's opinion means that a state can, without legal consequence, systematically dilute minority citizens' voting power. She criticizes the majority for characterizing its opinion as an update when, in fact, she writes, those updates eviscerate voting rights protections. The Supreme Court announced its decision in a major challenge to the Voting Rights Act, and in their opinion, which split along ideological lines, the justices struck down Louisiana's voting map, finding that it was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. wrote the majority opinion. Justice Elena Kagan dissented, joined by the court's other 2 liberal justices. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Judge asks Justice Department, will you oppose Trump? A federal judge has ordered the Justice Department to explain whether it intends to contest President Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over the disclosure of his tax returns. President Trump has made no secret of his desire for total control over the historically independent Justice Department, publicly directing prosecutions and declaring that government lawyers must follow his interpretation of the law. It is a norm-busting approach that has resulted in criminal investigations into several of his perceived political enemies, but his extraordinary influence over the department is now a potential obstacle to one of Mr. Trump's other apparent goals, receiving a $10 billion payout from the government he leads. In January, Mr. Trump sued the Internal Revenue Service over the leak of his tax returns to the New York Times in 2019, arguing that the agency should have done more to prevent the disclosures. Mr. Trump, as well as his family businesses and two of his sons, demanded at least $10 billion in damages. Officials at the Justice Department, which represents the IRS in federal court, have struggled with how and whether they could defend the case, given that doing so would necessitate that they contradict the president on a legal question. A government attorney has yet to make an appearance in the case, and the lawyers for Mr. Trump, not the Justice Department, asked to give the government more time to respond to the suit. That has left the federal judge overseeing the case, Kathleen Williams, an appointee of President Barack Obama in the Southern District of Florida, wondering whether the Justice Department even disagrees with Mr. Trump's claims in the suit. Although Mr. Trump avers that he is bringing his lawsuit in personal capacity, he is the sitting president, and his named adversaries are entities whose decisions are subject to his direction. The judge wrote in an order on Friday. Accordingly, it is unclear to this court whether the parties are sufficiently adverse to each other. Judge Williams ordered the government and Mr. Trump's personal lawyers to submit briefs on the question, essentially forcing the Justice Department to state its position on Mr. Trump's suit. As the judge explained in her order, the Constitution requires that the two parties in a lawsuit are genuinely opposed to each other and not colluding to engineer a legal ruling favorable to both sides. Without a conflict, the lawsuit is void and the judge must dismiss it. There's a requirement of adverseness, said James E. Fander, a law professor at Northwestern University, if the opponents are, in fact, obligated to follow the president's assessment of the law, and if the president says it's this way and it's got to be this way, there can be no space for a dispute. At a news conference last week before the judge's order, the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, declined to comment on how the department would respond to Mr. Trump's suit. The Department of Justice handles complicated decisions involving those types of issues every day, all day, and not just this Department of Justice. Every Department of Justice handles issues like that, he said. We'll be able to handle it at an appropriate and ethical manner. Experts see other problems with Mr. Trump's case. While federal law explicitly gives people the ability to sue the IRS if their tax information is improperly disclosed, they must do so relatively quickly. A group of former IRS and Justice Department officials filed an amicus brief in the case, arguing, among other things, that Mr. Trump filed the suit too late and that his request for at least $10 billion was far too large. There are other defenses that the Justice Department, if it were so inclined, could raise against Mr. Trump. Charles Littlejohn, a former IRS contractor, not only leaked Mr. Trump's tax returns to the Times, but also provided tax information about thousands of other wealthy individuals to ProPublica. Some of those other wealthy Americans have also sued the IRS on the same grounds as Mr. Trump. In response to those suits, the Justice Department has contended that the IRS should not be held liable for the conduct of Mr. Littlejohn because he was a contractor, not a direct employee of the agency. Those arguments may or may not actually prevail in court, but for the government to not even raise them in Mr. Trump's case would be a glaring change of course. Gilbert S. Rothenberg, a former tax lawyer at the Justice Department who signed the amicus brief, said he was hopeful that the judge would dismiss the suit or delay it until Mr. Trump left office. That would hopefully be the result because there would not be a case or controversy, he said. The new DOJ is not independent of the president in the way it used to be. But even if the judge dismissed Mr. Trump's suit, the Justice Department could still potentially settle the case. Most government settlements are paid out of the Judgment Fund, an uncapped pot of money that does not require congressional approval for any individual payment. Top Justice Department officials, including Mr. Blanche, Mr. Trump's former personal attorney, control the money spent from the fund. If this judge finds there's no legitimate case before the court at this time, that doesn't mean that a settlement would be illegal, said Mr. Paul Figley, a former Justice Department official who worked on torts. If the Department of Justice settles the claim, then the judgment fund would pay it. There are some signs that Mr. Trump and the government could settle. In their earlier filing against asking for more time in the case, Mr. Trump's lawyers wrote that they were holding talks with Justice Department lawyers designed to resolve this matter and to avoid protracted litigation. Mr. Trump's lawyers did not identify who from the Justice Department was engaged in the conversations. Mr. Trump's lawsuit against the IRS is not his only attempt to extract money from the government. In private administrative claims, he has also asked for the Justice Department to pay him $230 million as compensation for the federal investigations into him. Mr. Trump's IRS suit seeks an order of magnitude more money, though. His demand for $10 billion, if fulfilled, could more than double his net worth. Mr. Trump has said he would donate the taxpayer money to charity. Nobody would care because it's going to numerous very good charities, he said in January. King Charles to visit the 9/11 memorial in New York City. King Charles III charmed President Trump and hailed long-standing U.S.-British ties at a glittering state dinner on Tuesday. His state visit was set to continue with a wreath-laying ceremony in Lower Manhattan. King Charles III and Queen Camilla will spend Wednesday in New York City, the second leg of their 4-day state visit, following a day of carefully choreographed royal diplomacy in the nation's capital. In the afternoon, the royal couple will pay their respects to the victims of September 11th attacks during a visit to the memorial, accompanied by Mayor Zoran Mamdani and other local officials. The security for King Charles and Queen Camilla's New York visit will cause traffic headaches. Heightened security in New York City during a visit by King Charles III and Queen Camilla on Wednesday will involve intermittent road closures and traffic delays throughout Manhattan, according to the New York Police Department. Police officials did not provide specific details about the security arrangements, but urged commuters to use public transportation. For a royal family in turmoil, the state visit could be a moment of positivity. The family turmoil that King Charles III has weathered in the nearly 3 years since his coronation has amounted to the most significant crisis for the monarchy in decades. His brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew, was arrested this year on suspicion of misconduct in public office in connection with his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender. Charles's son, Harry, who lives in California, has spoken about his rift with his father in a book and television interviews. King Charles III's state's visit this week includes a stop in Virginia, where he is set to attend a quintessential American event, a block party. It will not be the first time the British monarch has immersed himself in American traditions. As the Prince of Wales, he sat front row at a Major League Baseball game, rode on San Francisco's cable cars, and stopped by a farmer's market. He attended a college football game in Georgia and a barbecue at Camp David. Beneath King Charles's jokes and decorum lay a subtle rebuttal to Trump. King Charles III quoted Oscar Wilde, joking that the British have everything in common with America, except, of course, language. President Trump said the morning's gloomy rain reminded him of a beautiful British day, and noted that his mother thought young Prince Charles was so cute. Both men waxed poetic about their bonds between their countries, and yet on the first full day of a state visit focused on the shared history between the United States and Britain, the king sprinkled in some ever so subtle rebuttals to Mr. Trump. Charles spoke on Tuesday of the value of the transatlantic alliance, the importance of checks and balances, and his passion for the environment. He even spoke of his time in the Royal Navy after Mr. Trump belittled British naval capabilities in recent weeks. King Charles III worked with House Chamber like a stand-up comedian in a joint meeting of Congress in Washington on Tuesday, cracking jokes and winning over his audience in a strained time in American-British relations. The King's speech received standing ovations and laughter across both sides of the aisle as he wielded his British humor like the most genial of scepters. Many foreign leaders have addressed Congress, but few kings. Foreign leaders have addressed joint meetings of Congress more than 120 times since 1874, when King David Kalakaua of Hawaii, then still a sovereign state, started the tradition, but the number of kings and queens among them is relatively few. On Tuesday, King Charles III became the 11th monarch to do so, and the first since King Abdullah II of Jordan in 2007. The king's visit comes amid foreign policy disagreements with the United States. King Charles III's state visit, timed to celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence, aims to celebrate the strong ties between Britain and the United States, but his trip may double as an unofficial diplomatic mission amid disagreements that have left Anglo-American relations at their most strained over foreign policy in decades. So annoyed is President Trump about Britain's failure to offer full support for his war against Iran that his administration, according to a memo drafted at the Pentagon, is considering whether to stop supporting British sovereignty over the Falkland Islands, which also are claimed by Argentina. FCC orders a review of ABC's broadcast licenses. The agency said the review was related to the network's diversity and inclusion policies, but it came amid a fight between the president of the network's late-night host, Jimmy Kimmel. Federal regulators on Tuesday ordered a review of all station licenses owned by ABC, an extraordinary move to pressure a major television network whose programming has frequently angered President Trump. The agency overseeing the review, the Federal Communications Commission, said in a filing that the action was related to an investigation into ABC's diversity and inclusion policies, but it came in the middle of a fight this week between Mr. Trump and the network's late-night host, Jimmy Kimmel, that prompted the president to demand the ABC fire Mr. Kimmel. The license review represented an escalation by the Trump administration and the president to punish major media outlets for their coverage. Mr. Trump has personally sued several news organizations, including the New York Times, and the Pentagon has tried to sharply restrict news media access. Mr. Trump's FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, has repeatedly threatened to take action against broadcasters, including to take away their valuable station licenses. His agency's action on Tuesday was the first direct step toward potentially doing so. It is extremely difficult for the government to take away stations' rights to broadcast. It must be able to make a convincing case that the stations had shown a pattern of violating rules and regulations. Even if the FCC ultimately decides to block the renewal of ABC's station licenses, the network will have ample recourse in the courts, and it would be able to continue to broadcast as the fight played out. The federal government has never been ordered such a sweeping review of a major television network's licenses, which allow the companies to broadcast in local markets. All told, ABC owns 8 of the more than 200 local stations that carry its programming across the country in vital markets, including New York, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. Still, the move all but guarantees months, if not years, of legal wrangling that would lock the network in an expensive running war with the federal government. ABC's parent company, the Walt Disney Company, said in a statement that it had long complied with FCC rules and that it was confident that the record demonstrates our continued qualifications as licensees under the Communications Act and the First Amendment, and are prepared to show that through the appropriate legal channels. Our focus remains, as always, on serving viewers in the local communities where our stations operate, the company said. Media lawyers and free speech advocates have decried the action. This is about as extreme an action as I've ever seen the FCC take against a broadcaster for frivolous reasons, said Gigi San, a senior staff member at the agency during the Obama administration. It's a message to every other network. Watch yourself, you might be next. Jamel Jaffer executive director at the Knights First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, said in a statement on Tuesday that if Mr. Trump gets his way, we'll have only government-aligned media organizations that broadcast only government-approved news and commentary. It would be difficult to imagine an outcome more corrosive to democracy or more offensive to the First Amendment, Mr. Jaffer added. Under normal FCC protocol, ABC would not have to apply to renew any of its station licenses, which run on 8-year terms until 2028, as Mr. Trump would be coming to the end of his presidency, and some of its licenses do not come up for renewal until 2030 and 2031. But a little-used provision of the law allows the FCC to force stations to apply for renewal of their licenses at any time, opening the door to an early refusal to renew. Mr. Carr walked through a theoretical version of the process in a podcast released on Tuesday shortly before his agency filed for the review. You can accelerate when a license comes due and say, hey, we have significant concerns about how you're conducting your operations, he said on the Katie Miller podcast. We want to review your license now and decide if you're in the public interest. The process provides Disney with 30 days to file its application to renew its license. If the FCC decides to deny the application and revoke the licenses, Disney will have a chance to plead its case at a hearing. The agency has some leeway to decide the venue for the hearing. According to a person with knowledge of the FCC's thinking, it could conceivably take place before the FCC's commissioners, 2 Republicans, Mr. Carr and Olivia Trusty, and 1 Democrat, Ana Gomez, who spoke out against the license review on Tuesday. Agency actions require a simple majority vote, but Andrew J. Schwartzman, a longtime public interest lawyer involved in media regulation issues, said typically at the FCC, and this instance is far from typical, the issue would go before the agency's administrative law judge. Mr. Schwartzman added that he regarded the case as all bluster, emphasizing how hard it is for the government to pull station licenses. License revocation, which has been rare, requires the government to establish that a license holder has exhibited patterns of serious violations. Even in previous cases where stations faced allegations of political favoritism, they were mixed in with suspicions of fraud and lying to regulators. More genuinely, the law forbids the FCC to use its regulatory power to censor. Even if this weren't frivolous to begin with, Mr. Schwartzman said, the legal standard for denying a license renewal is almost insurmountable. In its filing on Tuesday, the FCC indicated the decision to call for the early license review stemmed from an investigation started in early 2025 into whether Disney violated FCC rules, including the agency's prohibition on unlawful discrimination. It had come after an executive order banning what the administration referred to as illegal and immoral DEI programs in the federal government. The FCC has also started an investigation into the ABC show The View over equal time rules that apply to appearances by political candidates. But there was no mistaking the timing of Tuesday's actions, plans for which were reported earlier by Semaphore. It came one day after President Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump both called for the firing of Jimmy Kimmel over a joke he delivered in his monologue on his ABC late-night show last week. On Jimmy Kimmel Live last Thursday, Mr. Kimmel imagined he was the MC of the White House Correspondents' Dinner and, pretending to address Miss Trump, said that she had the glow of an expectant widow. That gala was ultimately canceled on Saturday after a 31-year-old man carrying deadly weapons breached security just outside the hotel ballroom. He has since been charged with trying to assassinate President Trump. Mrs. Trump criticized Mr. Kimmel's comments on Monday morning, saying that he shouldn't have the opportunity to enter our homes each evening to spread hate. Hours later, Mr. Trump said on social media that the ABC host should be immediately fired. Mr. Kimmel did not apologize during his monologue on Monday night. It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am, Mr. Kimmel said on his show. It was not by any stretch of the definition a call to assassination, and they know that. Last year, ABC temporarily suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live after Mr. Carr suggested he would take action against ABC because of a monologue joke that Mr. Kimmel made about the man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk. ABC's suspension quickly morphed into a flashpoint about free speech, and after a significant backlash, the network reinstated the late-night show 6 days after it was pulled off the air. The move once again cast Mr. Carr as Mr. Trump's top media pit bull, as The Hollywood Reporter has called him, a role he clearly relishes, but he has also drawn accusations that he is weaponizing telecom laws in doing the president's bidding, occasionally even from Trump-allied Republicans. In September, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, described Mr. Carr's threats to revoke Disney licenses for Mr. Kimmel's Kirk monologue as dangerous as hell, likening Mr. Carr to a mafioso. In November, a former Republican FCC chairman under President Ronald Reagan, Mark Fowler, and other former agency leaders petitioned Mr. Carr to eliminate a decades-old news distortion policy that Mr. Carr has occasionally cited in criticizing broadcasters. The former leader said it had become a tool that chills speech, invites abuse, and undermines First Amendment protections. Mr. Carr denied their petition, but on Tuesday, they filed a request to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia to order Mr. Carr to bring it to a vote. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. U.S. gas prices hit highest level since beginning of war in Iran. The jump on Tuesday of 1.6% was the highest percentage increase in more than a month. Gasoline prices in the United States rose on Tuesday to their highest level in 4 years as peace talks between the United States and Iran appeared at an impasse. The average cost for a gallon of regular gasoline is $4.18, according to the AAA Motor Club. The price at the pump has not been that high since April 2022, shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine. Tuesday's jump of 1.6% was the highest percentage increase in more than a month. Oil prices also climbed on Tuesday with negotiators deadlocked over proposals to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to tanker traffic and restrict Iran's nuclear program. The price of crude oil has risen steadily over the past week as talks have stalled during an uneasy ceasefire. Brent crude, the international benchmark, has posted gains in 6 of the past 7 trading sessions and remains more than 40% higher than it was before the first U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran in late February. Stock markets wobbled on Tuesday but remained near record highs. However, as corporate earnings have been largely resilient. A batch of financial reports expected this week from the largest technology companies, which are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on artificial intelligence systems, will be closely watched. Oil continues to rise. The price of Brent crude, the global benchmark for oil, jumped 2.7% to above $104.40 a barrel for July delivery, easing from its high for the day after the United Arab Emirates said it would leave the OPEC oil cartel next month. Brent's price has risen about $10 per barrel over the past week. The price for oil deliverable in June rose above $110 per barrel for the first time this month. West Texas Intermediate crude, the U.S. benchmark, rose 3.7% to $99.03 a barrel for June delivery. Investors and analysts are focused on the continued disruption to shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman that is a vital trading route for oil and natural gas that normally carries as much as 1/5 of the world's oil supply. Stocks dip ahead of Fed meeting and tech earnings. The S&P fell 0.5% on Tuesday after nudging higher on Monday. Investors await a number of tech company earnings and the Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates this week, which could move markets. Stocks in Asia, where countries import vast quantities of oil and gas, were mixed. The Kospi index in Korea gained 0.4%, but Taiwan's Sensex index slipped 0.4%. The Nikkei 225 in Japan slid 1% after the Bank of Japan held interest rates steady as expected, but some board members argued for a rate increase to deal with inflation risks spurred by the war in Iran. In Europe, the Stoxx 600, a broad index that tracks the region's largest companies, fell 0.4%. Gasoline prices tick higher. U.S. gasoline prices rose on Tuesday, jumping to a national average of $4.18 a gallon, according to the AAA Motor Club. The increase has raised the cost for drivers 40% since the war began. Gas prices don't move in lockstep with crude, usually trailing increases or drops. Diesel prices have increased even more quickly and stood at $5.46 on Tuesday, up 45% since the start of the war. What are they saying? Exceptional conditions for big oil companies. BP, the British oil giant, reported its largest earnings on Tuesday, comfortably surpassing analyst expectations by doubling its profit in the first quarter to more than $3 billion. The oil trading contribution was exceptional, the company said in a filing. Meg O'Neill, who recently took over as chief executive of BP, said in a statement that she joined the group at a time when our industry is operating in an environment of conflict and complexity, playing a vital role in keeping energy flowing. Graduates reset ambitions in pursuit of first jobs. Young people aiming to build careers are entering fields they had not considered to find their footing. Sadie Parker was fretting about finding a job. Many people she knew were having trouble landing work. She had wanted to join the Foreign Service, but she was worried that federal spending cuts would limit her options. She was petrified that artificial intelligence would wipe out other entry-level jobs. I was extremely anxious, said Miss Parker, age 22, who will graduate in June from the University of California, Santa Barbara, with a double major in political science and economics. To improve her chances, she broadened her search, applying for positions in consulting and other fields. She spent hours on a cover letter for a job at KPMG, the accounting firm, advising the California state government. I was like, wow, this looks so interesting, she said. The next day, I got a rejection. Recent college graduates are facing the most dismal and unpredictable job market in years. Employers overall are hiring fewer workers, dimming the prospects in particular for first-time entrants to the labor market. The rise of AI and its abilities are intensifying fears that entry-level jobs will disappear forever. Junior-level postings on the job site Indeed fell 7% in 2025 from the previous year, according to a report the company released last week. As a job seeker, we're having to work a lot harder to land that same job now because the competition has just really stiffened in the last couple years, said Corey Stahl, an economist at Indeed. Those forces have transformed the spring graduation season into a bruising ordeal for many of America's youngest degree holders. In interviews and in responses to a New York Times survey, some college seniors and recent graduates said they had applied to more than 100 jobs without securing so much as a first-round interview. A number have resorted to tracking their applications using detailed Excel spreadsheets. There is a swelling collective suspicion that AI is rejecting applications before human recruiters ever lay eyes on them. The hunt has frustrated nascent career dreams and forced many job seekers to recalibrate their post-graduation plans. Some are working as servers at pizza joints, as baristas at coffee shops, and in other jobs that do not require college degrees. Others have plans to attend graduate school to avoid the labor market altogether. Whereas embarking on a career used to be a goal after college, increasingly it is having any job at all. I'm like, is it me or is it really like the market right now, said Natalie Martinez, age 24, a senior at the University of Central Florida. I just feel like it's so hard for somebody to take a chance on a college graduate. Ms. Martinez said she had applied to 150 jobs since February. Really anything that comes up in my area, she said, including for positions as a receptionist or medical assistant, but she has not been successful. She spends sleepless nights doom scrolling for jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed, and is preparing for the possibility that she may have to move back in with her parents after graduation. I feel like I'm doing everything that I possibly can, she said. I just want some kind of path. Angst on college campuses about future employment is perennial and escalates during hiring slowdowns when companies are more reluctant to bring on inexperienced workers. A front-page article in the Times in April of 1991, for instance, took note of traumatized seniors whose job searches had become a disheartening struggle of resumes, rejection, and uncertainty. But fueled by the present frenzy around AI and public procrastinations of job market ruin, the typical jitters have hardened into dread. Students are definitely nervous, said Sean McGowan, the Director of Employer Relations at Carnegie Mellon University. College graduates typically do better during economic downturns than workers without degrees. And while there have been dire predictions about AI's effect on employment, the technology so far has not led to widespread job losses. Since the challenging job market has revived age-old questions among college students and recent graduates about whether going to college is worth it, I thought getting a college degree was the answer to everything, said Lucy Kanujuai, age 22, a senior at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. I feel like we just have to wait it out. I feel like getting my degree now is kind of useless. Miss Kanuuji, who struggles and juggles classes with work as a server at Topgolf, said she was constantly thinking about applying for more lucrative jobs that aligned with a career in healthcare, but she is concerned that her degree in liberal studies will not appeal to potential employers, especially in such a tough job market. She's thinking about getting a master's degree eventually in the hope that it will make her more employable. I'm afraid of the rejection that I'm going to face, she said. Jonathan McCartney, age 23, has felt similarly discouraged. A senior at the University of Florida who transferred from Colby College in Maine after his freshman year, Mr. McCartney studied public relations and wanted to get a job in communications. He focused his search on the Louisville, Kentucky area so he could live near his girlfriend, but snubs piled up, including from a local PR firm. I applied for an internship with them and I interviewed and I didn't even get that, he said. Who is this state-level firm taking for a PR internship if not me? Mr. McCartney recently accepted a remote job as an immigration services officer with the federal government. I just feel fortunate or grateful that this is an opportunity that ended up working out for me, he said. For Miss Parker, the senior at UC Santa Barbara, the sense of urgency was growing. None of her applications seemed to be gaining traction with employers. As AI's technology improved, she wondered if she was running out of time to find an entry-level job. I was very much like, okay, I got to make sure I do this now, she said. When one of her friends suggested that she apply for a job as a finance associate at a large health technology company, she jumped at the chance, even though she did not have experience in finance. She reached out to the company's recruiters on LinkedIn and set up an informational chat. Over the course of 3 months, Ms. Parker had one interview with the company, then another and another. It was kind of a stressful process, she said. 3 weeks after her third interview, in mid-December, she heard back for the last time. She had gotten the job. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Stephen Colbert gets ready to hang it up. His late-night show ends next month after 11 seasons. He has lots of feelings. Each episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert over the past few weeks has offered a fresh reminder that the final one is rapidly approaching. Oprah Winfrey swung by to tell Mr. Colbert that she needed to say goodbye. Jake Tapper came armed with a farewell gift. Billy Crystal sang him a song. The audience ovations are getting louder and louder. The feelings of the show ending are growing significantly now, Mr. Colbert said. Mr. Colbert's observation was part of a wide-ranging interview last week in his office above the Ed Sullivan Theater on Broadway. Appearing both relaxed, he was barefoot but also a bit restless. He occasionally fidgeted with an old-school football helmet. He reflected on the coming end of The Late Show on May 21st, as well as his 2-decade career as a late-night host. He also spoke about how his show had become so topical, President Trump, and what he might do next. He could be, as he put it, long-winded at times. Indeed, for one question, he gave an answer that lasted without limited interruption for 18 minutes. Of course, it was not Mr. Colbert's decision to end The Late Show. CBS announced last summer that the network would cancel the show after this season, its 11th, for financial reasons. It was soon wildly reported that The Late Show was losing tens of millions of dollars a year. Advertising revenue for all late-night shows has plummeted in recent years, and the number of shows has also fallen. Still, many have been skeptical of CBS's explanation. At the time, Paramount, CBS's parent company, was closing a multi-billion-dollar merger with the movie studio Skydance, a deal that required the Trump administration's approval. 2 weeks before the cancellation was announced, Paramount agreed to pay Mr. Trump $16 million to settle a lawsuit over an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes, a suit that many lawyers described as meritless. Mr. Colbert has been a sharp critic of Mr. Trump for over a decade. Mr. Colbert said the cancellation had surprised him, though he has made light of it too. Here are some excerpts from the interview, edited and condensed for length and clarity. The cancellation. One of the reasons Mr. Colbert found the cancellation surprising, he said, was that CBS encouraged him in 2023 to sign a long contract as long as 5 years. He ultimately signed a 3-year deal. It's been 9 months since you learned that you were canceled. CBS obviously claims that the show was canceled for financial reasons. Others are skeptical. I do not dispute their rationale. I do make jokes about it, but I also completely understand why people would say, A, that doesn't make sense to me, and B, that seems fishy to me, because the network did it to themselves by bending the knee to the Trump administration over a $20 billion, settled for $16 million, completely frivolous lawsuit. It's possible that two things can be true. Broadcasts can be in trouble. They cannot monetize because of things like YouTube, because of the competition of streaming. They've got the books, and I do not have any desire to debate them over what they say, their business model is, and how it does not work for them anymore. But less than 2 years before they called to say it's over, they were very eager for me to be signed for a long time, so something changed. You said that you understand if people make the assumption that the cancellation was fishy, but where have you settled out on this? I believe two things can be true. I'm not saying the two things are true. It behooves me not. It ain't behooving for me to spend a lot of time thinking about that. I have zero desire to have a contentious relationship with my network. I've really liked working with CBS. They've been great partners, and I'd like it to end that way. 11 years is a long time to work here, and almost 10 years before that. Almost 21 years altogether in late night. I feel so much better to be grateful for than to be mad about. Becoming topical. When Mr. Colbert took over The Late Show from David Letterman in 2015, his plan was not to have ruthlessly topical or political show. We were discouraged by the network from being topical, he said. It was my instinct to be less topical because I didn't want to have to engage with what I saw was an increasingly contentious public discourse. And I thought, aren't there other ways to have fun with the audience? But Mr. Colbert's opening 5 months on the show were rocky, and soon he started doing topical jokes. But the 2016 National Party conventions, Mr. Colbert went all in on news and biting criticism of Mr. Trump, and critics were suddenly writing rave reviews. Higher ratings followed. The change worked, right? I was like Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, or is it some other movie? He buried his guns, and I'm like, I'm buried those damn guns. I was talking to Paul Danello. He's one of my oldest friends and one of my producers here, and he's like, you're having fun, and people love to see that. And I said, but that means I got to go dig up the guns. And he says, buddy, that's the part the audience wants to see. Over the Trump administration, Mr. Trump frequently criticizes Mr. Colbert and many other late-night hosts. On Monday, the president called for Jimmy Kimmel to be immediately fired. Brendan Carr, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, has taken a keen interest in the sort of guests late-night hosts invite on their shows. Why do you think the FCC and the Trump administration are so focused on you? Authoritarians don't like anybody who doesn't give them undue dignity. Comedians are anti-authoritarian by nature, and authoritarians are never going to like anybody to laugh at them. The number of news people who have said it to me or Jon Stewart or any of the guys who do this, God, I wish I could say what you say on the air, and we can. I think that upsets them. I think it might be upsetting that we really do not live in their world of principalities and powers. Given that you and other late-night hosts have become political targets, and given how partisan late night has become, do you have any regrets that it's gotten to this point? I don't have any problem with Trump being a Republican. I have a problem with Trump being a complete narcissist who is only working for his own interest and does not appear to care if the entire world burns. That's not a partisan position. I have eyeballs and ears, and I think calling late-night partisan is just roughing the ref. And we don't even want to be refs, but they perceive us as refs. I reject the partisan description. Partisan means you're never ever going to make a joke about a Democrat, and that's just not true. There's just no comparison of how fertile the fields are. What's next? Here's what is known. Mr. Colbert, who will turn 62 before his show ends, is working on a script for Warner Brothers for a new Lord of the Rings movie. He also shared that he loves a live audience. He likes being a host and interviewing people. He loves podcasts and spends more time with podcasts than any other form of entertainment, and he wants to do comedy. Beyond that, Mr. Colbert was uncertain about what's coming next because the show takes like 95% of my brain. So you won't know until you're done with the show? It takes all my time, so I don't know. People have called to say, do you want to do X, Y, or Z? And I would say like, hey, that's great. I don't think I could give you a good answer until I can really think about it. It's literally took me years to think enough about writing one script, and I put a lot of thought into it. And I feel good about what we're doing, and I want to feel that good about everything I do. So when this is over and I have a little time to breathe, probably after turning in the first draft, too, of this thing, I'll know then. Is there some relief that you're not going to have to absorb every single thing in the news cycle, that you're not going to have to think about Trump in quite the same way? Oh yeah, now I can be as interested as I want to be on a daily basis, as opposed to as interested as I need to be to do a show that is about what our national conversation was about. I can opt out of the national conversation for a day or two. I mean, I'm an American. I still care about my country, and I'm still going to care, but I can do that recreationally, or privately. New Disney bosses tested by Trump and his administration. In the 6 weeks since Josh D'Amaro took over Disney, the setbacks have been nearly nonstop. OpenAI discontinued its text-to-video tool Sora, nullifying a $1 billion deal with Disney. A major video game maker faltered, clouding a partnership that Disney is counting on for growth. The Bachelorette on Disney-owned ABC imploded amid a scandal involving its star. Next, Mr. D'Amaro announced layoffs related to the company-wide cutbacks in marketing. But now Hollywood's newest chief executive has been confronted with a genuine emergency. One that could color his tenure guiding Disney through a political crisis with President Trump. Federal regulators on Tuesday ordered a review of all station licenses owned by ABC. The Federal Communications Commission said in a filing that the review was related to an investigation into ABC's diversity and inclusion policies, but it arrived after Mr. Trump demanded that the network fire its late-night host, Jimmy Kimmel. The federal government has never been ordered before such a sweeping review of major television network licenses which allow the companies to broadcast in local markets. If the FCC decides to block the renewal of the ABC station's licenses, the network will have ample recourse in its courts. Disney would most likely win a court battle. The legal standard for denying a license renewal is almost insurmountable, independent media lawyers say. But Disney could find itself locked into months, if not years, of expensive legal wrangling with the federal government. It is highly unusual for a new CEO to be given such a huge test so early on, said Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, president of Yale's Chief Executive Leadership Institute, who recently published a book about Mr. Trump's leadership style. It's a burden, but it could also be hugely valuable. Josh is now going to see who he can trust on the inside, who understands how he wants to operate. Disney owns only 8 of the more than 200 local stations that carry ABC programming, but Disney stations are the backbone of the network because they cover the biggest markets, including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, Houston, and San Francisco. Disney declined to make Mr. D'Amaro available for an interview. In a statement, the company said it was confident that its stations operated in full compliance with FCC rules. There are no signs that Disney intends to fire Mr. Kimmel. In fact, the fledgling chief executive sent the opposite message on Monday. On Saturday, the dinner was canceled after a man carrying deadly weapons breached security outside the Washington Hotel ballroom where the event was taking place. A 31-year-old suspect has been charged with trying to assassinate Mr. Trump. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the April 29th issue of the New York Times. Your reader has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.